So today what I did is I kind of wrote down what our project plan was going to be to kind of keep us a little bit more on track. So I've got it kind of written up here. I'll leave it up here, but basically the idea, and I'm speaking a little bit loudly so my speaker will pick it up. But anyways, we're going to make ourselves a database, just like we did last time. We're going to have users. We're going to have users have classes, and we're going to have classes. Yesterday when I went through and had the users have classes, I ended up putting users being an instructor or a student. But I think it makes much more sense to have, when you join a class, whether or not you're an instructor or a student for that particular class. Because I could be an instructor for this class, but also a student for a C# class, right? So we're going to make that database really quickly. We're going to have a couple of forms. I've kind of already pre-built them. We're going to have a /users form that's going to allow us to add new users. We're going to have a /classes form that's going to allow us to make new classes. And we're going to have a users have classes form that's going to have 3 drop-downs in it. Drop-down 1 is going to have all the users. Drop-down 2 is going to have all the classes. And then drop-down 3 is going to have a select whether or not you're an instructor or a student of that class. Cool. And then we'll have basically a couple other templates. The other templates will be a classes HTML file, which is just going to show all the classes. And then we're going to have a show HTML, which is going to show one of the classes. So basically, we're going to be able to click on things and be able to just pull up a single class, or all the classes, or the index HTML. Cool. So the goals of what I want you to get out from this mini lecture is just getting a little bit more comfortable seeing MySQL Workbench. I don't really expect you guys to be like, oh, that totally is intuitive. I totally understand how to use MySQL Workbench. It's awesome if you're at that level, but that's not my goal. But definitely seeing more routes and kind of getting more experience with routes. Seeing parameters being passed through in routes, which is new. And then obviously seeing request.form again and seeing that immutable dictionary object come through and get parsed. And then I have a single star for session. I don't really use it in this one, but we'll talk about it more with NinjaGold tomorrow, but I want you guys to make sure that you're aware that there's this cool session variable that allows you to basically, as long as your browser is up and you haven't refreshed it and turned Chrome off or turned Firefox off, that session variable will be available to you.
So did you want us to finish NinjaGold by today? Or?
That was the goal, and we'll have a demo of it tomorrow, hopefully. So as I said, this week is one of the hardest of the boot camp. I think it's just one of the most intense. So yeah. So if you're feeling a little bit behind, don't stress about it. That's kind of just how it is for this week. So everybody feels a little bit behind, even if you're like, oh, I can code like a boss, and then you're like, oh man, there's a lot of work. So cool. All right, so that's our project plan. And let's go ahead and start doing it. So I already have a virtual environment set up. So it's sitting there. I'm already have my folder set up because I'm pretty comfortable that you guys can set up virtual environments now and set up folders. Cool. And I've actually pre-built some of my templates. So let's look at what my templates have in them really quickly, and then we'll move on from there. So I have not done anything with my server.py. It's totally blank. So our index.html, we've got a bunch of forms. So forms goes to users as a method post, has some input fields, goes to courses, has some input fields, goes to users have courses with some input fields. And I have a very standardized naming. Basically, whenever you see like whatever the database table name is, slash whatever that database table is, and a post, that means I'm creating something for that table. So this combination, like users and post, for me always means I am adding a new user to my database whenever I hit that route. Similarly, if I see this route, courses and post, that combination for me is I'm going to add a new course to my database. And similarly, this last one, users have courses, that's my third table. It's a post. It's going to always be the route that's going to add a new element to this users have courses database. So
there's kind of 7 of these routes that I use all the time, which are called the RESTful routes and RESTful routing, and that's one of the strategies. So a users as a get is always get all of my users from my database. So we'll talk more about those, but just know that's my naming structure. And hopefully it'll be your guys' naming structure too. All right, so that's what I've got here as this template. My courses HTML page. Basically, I'm just going through and iterating through all of my courses. So for course in courses, I'm going to show the course title, the course description, and I'm going to have an anchor tag that's going to go to courses with a specific ID as a get. So hrefs are always get methods. So this combination, so plural of the table plus an ID as a get for me is always a show that particular element from my database. So it's a show method. All right. So that's kind of where I set myself up. So at this point, let's make our database. And then let's make our server. Sound good? Cool. All right, and so going over to MAMP, I'm going to turn MAMP on, just because MySQL Server doesn't work super well without it, or MySQL Workbench. Cool. All right. So we're going to go up to the top of this thing, go to File, New Model. We'll call this thing, what do we want to call this one? I don't want to save that old one, sorry. File, New Model, don't save. Get rid of that other one. All right, add a diagram. And we already have our tables that we want to make up there. So table 1, users, it's going to have an ID. It's auto-incremented. We're going to have a first name. Geez, I can't type. A last name. It's going to have a created at and an updated at. And that looks good. All right. So I don't think that's everything that we want for our users. All right, we want a classes table. Classes. Again, an ID, auto increment. We want a title. 45 is probably fine for a title for today. And we want a description. We'll make some text. Let's go with 500 again, or I think I said 1,000 yesterday, but whatever. And then a created at. And an updated at. And again, when you guys see this video, I apologize for all this tiny text. You'll get over it. I know you will. You're tough. All right. And then we're just going to make a many-to-many because we can have relationships between users and classes. So one user can take multiple classes. Multiple classes can be taken by many users. Cool. So that's what that table says. Because the user ID and class ID combination is unique, people will sometimes just leave stuff out of this table, but it's good practice to be able to actually access this whole table by its ID, and we're going to be doing that. So it's also good to have these guys as singular. So, right, if you're going to access a class, you want to get the class ID and the user ID from that combination. ID, auto increment that thing. Oops. Int. All right, and then the other thing we wanted to have is instructor level at this point, or level. So let's call that level. And we'll make that a varchar, that's fine. And then create it at and update it. Cool. All right, so let's label this thing. What do we want to call this thing? Let's call this classes pi2. So that's our database name. Database forward engineer. Continue, 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 continue. Close. Great. So now I can go over to Fred, refresh Fred. we have some error, and I don't know why, but whatever. We'll fix it in a second. Stop the server really quick. Go back over to Fred. And it's probably because I turned Fred on and off a couple times. Let's go back over here. All right, and there's classes 2 pi. All right, cool. All right, done with that guy for now. Back over to Adam. So now we're gonna make our server pi. So we can do that like so. I just have it hard coded so I can just build it super quickly. All right, so let's make some methods. So at app.route, and we go to def index, and when we go to index, we're going to return render template index.html, and we're going to pass in a dictionary with different information in it. I should actually just pass in a couple tuples. So we can say courses equals courses, and users equal users, and we don't know what those are yet, so let's make those. So let's make a couple of queries. Equals, so query 1 is going to be select star from, so we're just getting everything from our users. And then values, again, I just throw in something, and then users equal mydb, query underscore db, and then query comma values. And so remember yesterday, we had this connection.py file. We required a method out of that connection.py file, and that's where we turn on this mydb, or create this mydb variable. That mydb variable has a query underscore db method that basically takes whatever SQL query we have in here, and also takes this second parameter and populates the values in there. In this case, that second parameter is blank, so this thing's not going to populate anything, but I just like my syntax to be the same all the time because I'm lazy. And then we're going to make a second query, select star from courses, and we have values again empty, and then we'll call this values 2 so we just don't overwrite it by accident, and then we'll have courses equals the same thing, except 2 and 2. All right, so that should work, but it's not going to. And the reason it's not going to work is because we haven't done anything with this connection.py file, right? So,
Did you need equal for the courses?
what's that?
Did you need equal for the courses?
Yes. All right. So from, and then basically this from says go to this particular file connection and import, and we're going to import the one method that's available to us in here, which is this MySQL connector. So now that we have access to this MySQL connector from this other file, it would be the equivalent of basically taking this entire file and be like, gulp, take it over here, and shove it into our server.py. It would just be messy, but we could have done that. So we could have just been like, we don't want to do that whole annoying import stuff. We're just going to copy it all in here. And then now we have this value as well. But that's a lot of code that's kind of consistent, and we don't need it in our server. It's just going to clutter stuff up. All right. Cool. All right, so now we need to make our mydb variable, and we're going to have what that db variable is. We're going to say it's going to be MySQL connector, and we're going to pass it two things. The first thing is going to be app, and the second thing is the name of our database, which I believe we called courses pi2. But let's just check to make sure. Oh, classes pi2. Jeez. So there's that. Cool. Good so far? All right. Now, let's go ahead and see what happens when we try to run this, see how many typos I made, and see what else we get out from this. And let's print users and values at this point. So these should be two empty lists. So there shouldn't be anything in them yet. Courses. So we should just get two empty lists at this point because we haven't done anything with them. So let's go ahead and check and see what happens. So ls python server.py. Cool. So it didn't break. That's always a nice sign. Localhost 5000. All right. So there it broke. So classes by courses doesn't exist, and it's probably because I labeled this thing like classes instead of courses. And yep. So we're gonna have to change our SQL query. So this is gonna be classes. So if you want, if you do Command D or Control D and you've selected something in both Sublime and in Atom, you can select multiple things and get multiple cursors and then change them all at once.
Line 13.
Was that?
Line 13.
Oh yeah.
The one that actually.
The one that actually matters. All right. Cool. All right. So now, there we go. All right. So again, pretty awesome CSS. I gotta say, pretty pro. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see just how awesome that CSS is. I have a blue box around my forms now, and they are now vertically aligned rather than scrolling across sideways. All right, so in this form, we don't have any instructors or students to actually add, so it makes sense that these guys aren't showing anything. This is obviously how we're going to add a user, so let's just add me. And right now, we don't have a method to be caught, so we're going to get a request error. Right, so we couldn't find that URL. We tried to go to users as a post. Obviously, it didn't happen because we don't have any way to listen for that. So to listen for that, what we do is we have an app.route. App.route, and the method's going to be /users, and it's going to have a method equals a post. Cool. And we can have def. Let's call this thing create users. And what we're going to do is when we get this thing, we're going to get a request.form and print it. All right, and then we're going to insert something into our database. So, and then we're going to redirect back to our home. So remember, this redirect is just another type of get. So it's basically going to say, hey, go back and do another get method. That get method is going to be found in this route, and it's just going to run this whole thing again. So that's what a redirect does.
Do you need to return redirect?
I do need to return redirect. Thanks. All right, so let's make ourselves a query. And that query is going to say insert into users. And we're going to put in the values that we're going to put in. So first name and last name. And created at and updated at. And you should think that I would be able to actually type these because I type them all the time. But I can't. Values. And again, we're going to pass in values, and we're going to use this weird notation, which is going to prevent SQL injection. And so we're going to talk more about SQL injection on Friday, but basically SQL Alchemy will parse out a string and prevent you from doing crazy things that will break your database or allow other people access to your database that you do not want. It's a really common attack on websites, and it's really bad to let people do it. So. And one thing I should mention about hacking attacks in general, it's kind of not the fact, but the assumption that no website is safe. It's basically you want to cut down the chances that there are enough people that care about your site that will actually attack it. So if you're getting 100,000 hits per day, those are distinct users per day, you assume that maybe 1 out of 1,000 people that play on the internet are slightly nefarious and might try something. and they might try just a simple SQL attack, and then maybe 1 out of every 1,000 of those people actually have some skills, and so you have a nefarious person with some skills that 1 out of every, what is that, 1 million people? And so if you're getting 100,000 distinct hits per day, you would expect to attack a real attack once every 10 days is kind of how you think. So the more protection you have and the more skills you require, so let's say you have enough protections that it's 1 out of every 100,000 people, then the chances that you get hit is, another 100 times longer than that. So once a year, or 3 times a year at that point. Cool.
You ever get mad and hack them back?
I do not have that many skills, so no. I wish I could. I've thought about basically encrypting all of my database and having one of the things that gets decrypted being a script that runs. So if somebody broke a database and decrypted it all, that they would then have a script that was running on them. But I have not done that. But that was my best idea for reverse hacking somebody. So we have this first name, last name coming in, and we're sticking them in this dictionary. All right, and then again, all we need to do is run this database. So we have mydb query, blah. So sorry for the sound effects. It's just something I do. So, all right, so we can make it pretty much the same sort of idea for our classes. So I'm just going to copy all that and basically use our convenient new skill and, oops, is that all of them? One too many. Classes, cool. And then rather than first name and last name, we're going to just go find those things and change them to title. And last name, we're going to change to description. All right, so there's the 2 forms, hopefully being able to make classes and make users.
Do you also need to insert instructor level?
That's on the 3rd form. Yeah. So just make sure, I probably broke my server. Because as I think I mentioned yesterday, I tend to save all the time. And so if you save with Flask and you have some sort of broken code, your server will get turned off and it'll give you an error of some sort. All right, so let's add user, Mike, Hannon, and then add user. All right, so that looks okay. It looks like it ran potentially, and there's our new user. So now we went from 2 empty arrays to 1 not empty array and 1 empty array. And let's add a class. Python, because web development with Python is awesome. Right? Oh, crashtacular. And it's because I use courses instead of classes because I'm ridiculous. All right, so I have this classes route getting caught, but my index.html page has courses on here, so we need to make that classes. All right, cool. So that should now work. Now let's figure out why we didn't get things showing up actually on our page. All right, so in our index method, we have classes equal classes, users equals users. And let's go to our index.html. And I probably screwed something up obvious in this. So we've got courses and courses, so that's going to just have to change. So let's make this to classes. And then that's probably okay. User and users. I'm surprised this one didn't work. So let's just see what we have in user. All right, we'll just print users up there to see what they are. All right. Okay, so user looks like it's fine. So it's coming over perfectly happily. So let's figure out why our dropdown is not quite working right. All right, so now here's our select tag. We've got user and users, so we should get options for each of those users. Let's hope, right? So user and users. Well, let's break it apart some more. So I'm just going to copy this code. And we're just going to print out user. Is that making sense? Okay. So let's see. So I'm just basically breaking this apart, trying to figure out what I did wrong. All right. So here's an individual user, which makes sense. So it took it out of that list and just put it into the dictionary. So we're now at the dictionary level of this thing. So now we should be able to do first name. So check this out. So notice this guy is just name. I was going to do something tricky with my SQL query, but let's not worry about that. Let's just change it to first name. And we'll print out last name right afterwards, so that we know which person it actually is. And we'll do the tricky thing with the SQL query tomorrow. Basically, you can concatenate first name and last name into one little object so that you can call it by something else. All right, cool. So there's our instructor. Awesome. So let's make ourselves a new class, Python, and Charlie loves Python, but hates lectures because he just walked away because he's a jerk. All right, cool. All right, and my form down here doesn't have a submit yet, but we should be able to select things and eventually submit that form. So let's make ourselves and add that last piece to that form, that submit. All right, so going over to our index.html, we need to have an input, and it's going to be type submit, and a value equals add user to course. Class. Keep it classy. All right, so now we have that, and now we have this next route that we have to catch. So users have courses. So going over to our server.py, we're going to go and basically just copy this thing because it's pretty much the same thing. And this is the reason that I like to keep my naming pretty consistent, because it's really easy to just be like, hey, this is how I'm going to use this thing all the time. As I said, whenever I see a plural route and a post, I know what I'm going to be doing with it. User has class, because I'm going to get added to a class, and therefore I have class, right? Okay, never mind. I hate you guys. See, that was how classy I am. Let's see here. What's the name of this route? So, yeah, there we go. Users have courses, classes. All right. And you guys should know that I don't hate you at all. I think you guys are doing awesome. All right. So users have classes. Okay, create user have class. We're going to insert into users have classes. We're going to pass in the different pieces. So we're going to have user ID. We're going to have classes, our class ID. And we're going to have level. And then we're going to have created at and updated at still. All right. And then the values are going to be user ID. Oh, that's not what I want to do. Class ID, and we're going to need a level, because cool. All right, so values again. Colon level. Yep. All right, so user ID, class ID, class ID, because I have, yeah, and then a level. Come back here, level. All right. And request.form, and And again, and one other thing that you guys are going to see in this is that my typing is going to be really loud, and I apologize for that too. But you guys are probably used to it from the other videos. So, user ID and class ID. Cool. Anything else I need to do for that? Is that looking like it's going to work? I don't know. Let's find out. Oh, no.
So it crashed at some point.
It's because I had... So one of the ways... I don't know if you saw that crash or what it was. So I had two methods at some point when I saved it where this definition was matching the same as this definition when I did that copy and paste. And you can't have this definition being matched to two different decorators. So we can name these things whatever we want. They just can't be the same as something else that's been named. All right. So that's up and running now. Who do we want to add? Jack Brownstein. And add that user. All right. We can make him a Python instructor. Add user to class. Oh, so users have classes. So probably my routing is off again. Users have classes. What is it? Method post. All right.
What's your request top form look like?
Probably not what you expect it to look like. Let's find out. So we want to look at our request.form. So this is what we just submitted down here. So course ID, user ID, level instructor. That's the request.form. And then let's look at what how I tried to access it. Not that one. Okay, that's yesterday's. Sorry. And hopefully that one. Okay. So server.py. All right. So we've got user ID, request.form user ID, class ID, level. Did you see something else that I did wrong there?
No, I didn't realize that you were sending a level along. I thought that was
Let's just take a look. So, notice this course ID. That's probably what it is. So I tried to go after class ID, but I did not succeed. So, to fix that, we have a couple options. The easiest one is just to change this to course ID. So we just basically remapped it to this class ID that we're going to pass into our database.
Hey, when you print out your request top form, what's with all those U's?
Those U's are Unicode characters because I use Python 2 in this particular instance.
I don't know, like if I think all those U's are distracting, do you have anything to recommend?
No, not offhand. Tell me more. What do you recommend, Jack?
Oh, Python 3 switched Unicode to default text encoding, so Unicode strings are no longer specifically identified.
All right, well, let's play around with that then. So, Jack says we should use Python 3. So I can do work on py3 flask and switch it over. All right, so now I can run that. But now other things are going to break that I have. So, which is fine. They're easy to fix. So one of the things that Python does is Python 3 and Python 2 use prints differently. So everywhere I have a print request form, I'm going to have to put that, let's do print request form. I'm going to have to put parentheses because print is a function, so it's a function call. And it's a function call in Python 2 as well, but they basically made it not need parentheses in Python 2, but Python 3 they're like, we should put parentheses on it because it's a function call. All right, cool. So now it should work, hopefully. Oh, see, there's the missing parentheses in call to print. So line 16. And 17. I think everything else should work.
I don't know, are you dividing something in there?
Nope. I don't divide. I unify. Sorry. Okay. All right. So they're the user gone. Cool. All right. So now we've got that. Let's do one last thing, and let's do, instead of when we add a user to a class, instead of going back and basically going back to this page, let's go to a page that has all of our classes on it. All right. So we're going to change the routing a little bit. So going over to Atom, instead of redirecting to slash off of this one, let's redirect to classes. So it's going to be a get method to classes. And so again, for me, I've kind of standardized methods. This is going to be my classes index. So we're going to do something like def, at app route, quote classes, and the method's going to be a get, which we can leave off, right? Def classes index, underscore index. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say classes. Oops, sorry. We're going to make a query equals select star from classes, which we've done before. We're going to have values being empty because we don't care. And then we're going to do basically get the same thing that we did before. So up here, we said this stuff. And we'll make these query and query. Cool. All right. And then return, redirect to, so we don't want to redirect, right? We want to render template. And the courses, because I mislabeled that HTML page. But yes, so classes equal classes. And in our courses HTML page, I think I probably named this thing courses. So this is really bad practice to toggle things like this between courses and classes because it's really confusing. So don't do it when you guys do it, but it should work for this. All right. So now we have this courses HTML. So for course and courses, hopefully we'll see all these things show up. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, breaktacular. All right. So I'm going to add myself as a student to the Python class and add user. Okay, so we have an error in here. Users have classes doesn't exist because let's look at the naming of this table. All right. So if we wanted to look at our tables, we can go into our database and users has classes, not have classes. All right, so all right. Nope, that's not the one I needed to look at. So what was the error that I have? So classes py, users have classes, does not exist. We got that to work earlier, didn't we? Or did we have a break before we even got to that point? Users, but it still has classes, right? So that's the misspelling. All right. So users has classes. Let's just check that one more time so we don't break it again. All right. Users has classes. All right. Perfect. Select star from users as classes just to see what's in there. So if it worked before, great. And if it didn't, so it did not work before. So Jack, I'm sorry, you are not a Python instructor yet. But we will fix that in a second.
So I noticed you write your SQL queries all lowercase, but everything I've seen has them uppercase.
I know.
What's that about?
Because I'm trying to type quickly and I'm lazy. All right, so now Jack is an instructor. All right, so here are the courses that we have. We have Python and Charlie Python hates. I don't know. I can't type clearly. And the last thing we want to potentially do is maybe join this course. And so joining this course will send us to a URL courses and we'll pass in what course ID that's coming over. So let's make our last routing event. And this is where I'm going to stop at app.route. And it's going to be courses, again, because we're doing this weird toggling thing. And you can pass in parameters and typecast them like so. And I might have screwed that up, but we'll find out in a second. So def show course. So whenever you show class, I guess it is, which I'm not doing. Sorry. So this is hopefully going to be a parameter, and the parameter is going to be named ID, and so we need to pass it into our function here. And let's print ID, and then return. For now, we're just going to redirect back to home just to see what that print is. And we'll go back to classes just so it doesn't change pages on us. All right, so let's see what happens. Sound good? You guys sound so excited right now. All right. So it didn't break. Oh, yes, it did. All right. And there we go. Let's add me as a student. All right, cool. So now I'm going to click on join this class. All right, notice this print came up. All right, so now we have access to this 1. So now we can do stuff with our database with that 1. And what we might want to do with that database is something like, let's, instead of redirecting here, we're going to render a last page, and we're going to say query equals select star. Well, let's just do user dot first name. User's first name, that's fine. From users has classes. That's weird, right? I mean, we're going after this users table, but we're getting it from this users has classes table. Ugh, that's super strange. So let's see whether or not we can fix that. All right, so we need to get users somehow. So we're going to left join. And we're going to left join users. And we're going to go after the ID is equal to users has classes dot user ID. So you can think of these two things as little puzzle pieces that are connecting. So the users have an ID, and the users has classes has a bunch of IDs, and basically it's matching those puzzle pieces up.
Why are you using a left join instead of an inner join?
So in this case, it won't matter because all of our users have classes, will be populated. But basically, the left join preserves the furthest left table and keeps all of the data there. Whereas an inner join, if there's any null columns, those will be eliminated. The way I'm going to set this up, it won't matter because basically users has classes has everybody in them. So there are no null tables, but that would be the difference between the two. I tend to use almost all left joins because it helps me organize my queries. Basically, if I say I always want to preserve that left side, it lets me basically say, hey, I've got this left side, and it helps me structure how I want to do the rest of my queries. But, all right. So, and I want to do it where something equals something. Where users has classes dot class underscore ID equals :ID. So what we're saying is I want to get all of the users from this users has classes table and basically match the class ID to the class that I just clicked on. All right. And that was pretty convoluted sounding. So if you are confused, definitely watch this again or just bug me. That's probably the easier way to do it. And then we have classes equals mydb query underscore db. And we want to basically run query and values like we always do. All right, and we want to pass over, instead of return redirect, let's just return render template. And we'll make some new one. Let's call this one course.html. So this is a show method, and we're going to pass over that classes equals classes. All right. So all we're getting is the user's first name from this thing. So it kind of be interesting. It'll be like users bracket first name, which is going to make absolutely no sense, but that's okay. And last thing, we'll make a new template, new file, course.html, and in that, we're basically just going to go through a for loop, and then for person in courses, we're going to print out person bracket first name, and then in that for loop. So hopefully we'll get Jack and myself back. All right, cool. So let's take a look at that. I probably broke it like 6 times in there. Yeah. Cool. All right, so let's join this course. All right, so we have an error somewhere.
Your left join syntax. Isn't it left join table name on?
Yes, it is. Server.py. So left join user on users.
Left join
Yeah.
users on users ID dot.
Users. Left join users on. There we go. Yeah. Thanks. Cool. Okay, restarting that. And let's just refresh this page. Oh, didn't break, that's good, but we didn't get quite what we wanted. So let's go ahead and print what we've got, see what we actually have coming back from this thing. And let's take a quick look at our database to see if we actually have anybody added to our classes. All right, so there we go. There's 2 people added. So that looks okay. And then let's print classes. See what we have in our classes and see if we actually have anything there. And I think that should have just broken because I was missing a parentheses. Yes. All right. Okay, so we got things coming back. So we should be close to getting something. So
Did you say first name user not first name? Oh,
thought so, but let's figure out what we did wrong.
it's in courses not classes.
And this is why naming is important. All right. Cool.
And now shouldn't that be that line inside the for loop be indented in?
Stylistically, yes. Cool. All right, so I'm going to stop there. Any questions before I stop? So again, I know this is every day. I know it's a lot of stuff because you're like, oh, I'm just seeing Python for the first time. All right, I've now used some dictionaries. I've used some lists, and now I've built some things with Flask. Oh, now I've built a web page. Oh, look, here's a database. Oh, wow, that's crazy. All right, so as I said, you guys are doing awesome. Sorry I haven't been here in the afternoons as much as I normally would, but you guys seem to be just cruising through stuff, so it's
I
pretty
have a
fantastic.
question.
Yeah.
In Python 2, when you say 10 divided by 4, why does it say the answer is 2 instead of 2.5?
Because Python 2 is silly. That's why. Is that a good answer?
Yeah.
All right.
I like it.
Cool. Okay. So I'll put this up on YouTube at some point tonight. It'll take about an hour and a half to upload it generally. And then I'll put the link to it on Slack. And you can turn it on to like 4x speed and listen to me chirp like a chipmunk. Because that's what I would do, or not watch it ever again.